we're going to talk about many things, but who is Neysha Sudin?
Oh my gosh, that's
Yes.
like the most difficult question you could ask me. I thought you were going to ask, what's your
So
favorite
you're a
color?
mother, you're a wife, you're a sister.
First, yeah. So I'm all of the above. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I'm a mother of one.
Mhm.
I'm a wife of one.
I hope.
For now. For now.
I hope.
Until the laws change. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a publisher. I am a fundraiser. I'm a daughter, a friend to, very good friend to a few, acquaintance to many,
Many.
across the Caribbean. And yeah, and I give back to my community. So a lot of my time actually right now is to giving back. So that's basically me in a little nutshell.
No, because I like to start with who the person really is, not just what you've done, but we're gonna get into that. So I know many people have asked you this question, but I'm gonna spit it a different direction. So, what was your choice jobs growing up? What is it Nisha wanted to do growing up before you actually got into the modeling? I know you got into the modeling. What did you study?
I studied criminology. It really, really did help me working here in the Caribbean. But so I did a double major in psychology and law, and then with a concentration in criminology. And basically, it's a study of crime from the psychological aspect as well as from a legal aspect. And then at the end,
Interesting.
I know, and then at the end of my university, I had this awesome opportunity to go and model. And when you grow up being a nerdy girl, and someone says, "Oh, I think
But
you would
lots
look
of
like."
models started out playing basketball and doing nerdy
Uh-huh.
things, and then they transform into these divas.
I'm not too sure if I transformed. I am true to my nerd self, but yes,
So you're a sexy nerd.
I'm a sexy nerd. I love it. I am a sexy nerd. So no, but I think that when I was, you know, found back in the 80s, late 80s or early 90s, you know, the ethnic models were now coming into style. So you had a man and you had all these gorgeous, gorgeous ethnic girls that were walking the ramps all through Europe. And so when they found me in Canada and asked whether I would like to model
So
for
it was a
Elite.
situation you were walking through the mall and they saw you. You know
Not
the
really.
typical model story.
No,
It was
yeah.
I was having drinks with my friends
And
so
someone
that's
came
why
up to me
someone
and said,
came up
"You're
to me.
stunning. You have to model for me." No, not quite. So there was a scout, and it was for a school to teach you how to become a model. And they had asked whether I would like to, and I said, absolutely not. And then they'd come back to me and said, "Look, we actually have a job that we think you'll be perfect for. Um, you know, would you like to just come and do it?" And I said, "Well, sure. How much does it pay?" And when they told me that, I said, "Cha-ching,
Ching.
possibly." And so that was the beginning of my modeling career. And then it took me to Italy, which was lovely. So I did some modeling in Canada, and then I went to Italy. Yeah.
And what was that experience like in terms of going to a designer, doing fittings? Because it's an experience that a lot of people dream of, whether or not it was short-lived for you for whatever reason. It is still an experience that a lot of people don't get to really know what it's like to be in the real fashion capital.
So being in the fashion capital is amazing, whether you're in New York or you know, Milan or Paris
Or London.
or London. Being a model is not glamorous. You have to have wide shoulders and skin like leather, because every casting you go to, most 90% of the castings that you go to, they look at your portfolio and they're like, "Next."
No reason, no
Nose too big, next. Boobs too small, next. So no, it's, you know, you get put down a lot. And then finally someone says, "Oh yeah, so possibly we could use her. Just put her to stand in a corner." So, and then they go and they cost you again until they make their final decision. So no, it's hard. Modeling it's tough. I was doing it for fun. I had already had my degrees under my belt. And And I thought this was a great way for me to see Europe. So I went with it.
Hey, who could argue with that? Like, seriously, who could argue with that? And so I know personally you had issue with cancer and you're a cancer survivor. Share that story with us.
So I left Milan to come home to Barbados to see my mom and my dad. And I'd been out partying. I mean, you know, I was 21, 22 years old. And no, actually, I lie. I was 24 years old. And I'd come back home. So the first thing that you do when you come back home is you go straight out to meet your friends. So I went to Harbour Lights. I was partying. And came home the next morning. My mom was like, Neysha, you know, you have a little lump in your neck. I'm like, no, I was...
So that's the vodka?
I was like, that's vodka, rum, tequila, a couple of cigarettes, you know. So, and then I got the cold. Mommy took me to the doctor, and the doctor said, no, that is definitely a lump in your neck. And so I had it tested, and within a couple of days, I was under the knife, and it was stage 3 thyroid cancer that had then sort of moved on into my lymphatic system. And so, you know, 24, being diagnosed with cancer, and back then, because it was a long time ago, cancer was called like the big C, you know. So I was just like, not one boy is going to want to kiss me anymore because they're going to think that they're going to get cancer. So,
because it was misunderstood back then.
Of course it was, because it was so new. And so, yeah, but then nothing bad happens to one in life, you know. So this for me was a new stage for me to be on. I couldn't be on a modeling stage anymore because I had a huge scar across my neck. But then I found a new stage to be on, and that was for cancer advocacy. And I became the spokesperson throughout the Caribbean talking about cancer. So that was good.
So that was a totally different type of stage that you
a
never
stage.
expected that you would, and command the attention is about you and your message. So they're listening to you, they're looking at you. So you know what? Everything did lead up to that point, you being that star.
And the one thing that illness does to a person, if they are strong enough to accept it, is it makes you into a strong person. You could you know, become a victim. Some people fall victim to their illness, and some people say, nah, man, screw that. Now I know what life is all about. I'm going to live my life to the fullest. I'm not going to let one day go by that I don't do something that's meaningful. So
Agreed.
I chose that path.
Clearly, from what we have here, clearly, but we're going to get into that. So after all of that, and then you came back home, how did you decide to start your magazine?
So now I was forced to stay here in Barbados because I was recovering, and I had to go up to Toronto to get my treatment. You can do treatment here. There's no chemo or radiation here for thyroid cancer. And so I had to fly away to get my treatment. And while I was here, I sort of started getting bored because I wasn't dying. I was here and wasn't doing anything. So, and I'm a criminologist. So it was either go and work at Glenderry Prison or with the Ministry of Justice or do something. And you know, Greg, the one thing, and we've talked about this, the one thing that I realized was that while I was away, everyone away, whether it be Canada or the States or Milan or Paris, they didn't really understand the true lifestyle that we have in the Caribbean. They thought that the Caribbean was an archipelago of hotels, and that if you lived in the Caribbean, you either owned a hotel, owned a restaurant, worked in a hotel, worked in a restaurant, or was in the tourism industry. And so I wanted to show the rest of the world how we live and how we eat and our beautiful design and our houses and our art. And then when I came back home, I was deeply saddened that I would walk into someone's house and they would have a beautiful bouquet of lilies and roses on their mantelpiece. And then for dessert, I was being offered strawberry cheesecake. I'm like, strawberries? Dude, guava, soursop, dunks. I mean, they're all these local ingredients that you guys are not using. But in the Caribbean, we have and still have a tendency to think that whatever is foreign is
It's
better.
better.
Nothing local is good enough.
And from a tourism, a hotel background, I realized that a lot of the chefs want to create the international cuisine, but the persons coming here want to have something
Local.
that's local. You don't have to make it 100% local, but fusion, that's the beauty about
Absolutely.
food and art. You fuse what you may be trained at Juilliard and you come and give it a Caribbean feel.
Absolutely.
So you just change it to suit your surroundings and where you're from. That's the beauty
Greg,
about
do you know
fusion.
how many, and for all of you chefs out there, the amount of restaurants in not just Barbados, but throughout the Caribbean that serve a seared tuna on garlic mash with a side of asparagus? Who wants to eat that?
I mean,
We want-
people, but I mean, because it's the choice on the menu, people do order it. But people want to hear something local. I remember there was a story. A guy brought in this international food critic,
Oh.
and they took him to all the fancy places. But he was like, "Oh, enough of this. I want stuff that's local." And the man to take him for some pudding and sauce, and he
Of course.
freaked. He was like,
Of course.
"What is this?"
Of course.
He's never ate anything like
Uh-huh.
that in his life.
Yeah.
But I think we are, I don't want to say ashamed, but we put ourselves down in that it's not good enough,
Of course.
or it's only good enough for us.
Because whatever's foreign is better.
It's sad. It's really sad, but it's a reality.
That is how I started my first magazine, which is Macro Caribbean Living. And what Macro Caribbean Living it's a magazine that looks international.
But
and
it's about the content.
it's about the Caribbean, and it shows the whole world how wonderful we are. Our houses, our art, as I said, our gardens, our food, our hotels, everything.
Our lifestyle.
And showing how we live, but in a very international way. And I wanted to actually sort of inspire Caribbean people to love what's in their backyard.
I got golden apples in mine.
And I love golden apples.
So, you did the Macro Caribbean Living, and then you went into what magazine was next after that?
So then after Macro Caribbean Living, I I co-published a business magazine with a publisher here. And then my third magazine was an energy guide for the energy sector in Trinidad. And then I started Destinations, which became one of Barnes & Noble's top selling magazines,
You don't have a
travel
copy?
magazines. I don't
Okay.
have a Destinations. And so that was sold, Macro and Destinations were sold across the world, 58 different countries around the world sold those magazines. And they were produced right here in the Caribbean. And then I just went on to produce more and more magazines. And then the crash happened. Of course, magazines, we earn our revenue through advertising. So during the financial crash, the first thing that companies do in times of fragility is they cut back on marketing. It's the easiest part of your business that you could cut back, and part of your budget. And so what I did was that as there were all these publishing companies around the world that were closing, and I was just like,
What next?
do you know what? I'm going to start launching new magazines that had more affordable advertising to get all of those advertisers that couldn't afford in all the expensive magazines. And so then my company then grew during the recession. And then I was able to get other contracts, like for Sandals Resorts. So during the recession, they then left their big publisher and then came to me, and I was able to do a lot more contract publishing for other companies in and out of the Caribbean.
So, and people they deal with a lot of fashion and
Yeah.
lifestyle in terms of the events and stuff like that. That's the focus. 'Cause I wonder if you have something that's solely focused on fashion, or you're not really into a magazine about
It was so
fashion.
funny. Everyone sort of assumed that because I was a model, that my first magazine would be a fashion magazine. But I do believe, however, that you need to produce enough content that is strong enough to keep your readers. And in the Caribbean, fashion trends are global. Food trends are not necessarily global. We could promote our Caribbean food, and people all around the world may love and want to learn about Caribbean food. I didn't really know if people around the world were that interested in Caribbean fashion because our fashion industry in the Caribbean is now beginning. And I think that we're going to grow.
Yes,
but we're
it's
going to
now
grow.
getting that stage.
But in Barbados, for instance, it's taken us so long to even have a fashion association. In Trinidad, we're a lot further. In Jamaica,
they're leaps and bounds over us. So yeah, I totally
And
understand.
actually, in Trinidad, a fashion TT, which is a state company that deals with fashion, falls under the Ministry of Trade, not of culture, of trade, so that we
It's
could take our
business.
fashion. It's a business. So you have to deal with fashion as a business, not as part of some festival, which is culture.
I never thought of it that way. No, but that's really good to make it to the mandate of what it's about. So you treat it as a business and not just showcasing something cultural
Exactly.
as a part of some
So the
festivity.
fashion industry, the film industry, the music industry should be contributing to our GDP. We should be earning revenue from those industries, and therefore it
And
should
Shelley
fall.
did bring that up when I interviewed Shelley, that there's lots that can be done with RC Island cotton. We have the best cotton
Yes.
here where we're not
Had.
utilizing yeah,
Because I don't see any Sea Island cotton here anymore.
But because it is so expensive to buy. I've talked to many designers who want to use the Sea Island cotton, and they're like at $147 or $45 a yard. I mean, and first of all, you cannot take that to your maker and they make a mistake. Not at $145 a yard. That has to be some impeccable persons dealing with that fabric, that every piece of fabric is utilized in something else, because that's really expensive. But lots can be done to encourage the use of the product.
Absolutely.
But we are still learning, we're still growing, and as you just said, it's still at the baby stage as far as they're concerned. There's lots of practitioners when it comes to fashion, but there's still lots about the business aspect that is missing.
But what everyone sort of thinks is that being part of the fashion industry means being a designer, and it doesn't. There's so many chains. There's so many levels of the fashion industry where you could earn revenue. If we were able to train people, students, on how to make clothes, we could actually attract designers from all over the world to come to Barbados to have their clothes manufactured right here, or special, or tie-dye, or we could find a niche within the fashion industry and really sell that globally so that we actually bring in foreign exchange. Creating 1,000 fashion designers in Barbados, there's some like you who are going to be on the world stage one day. But then there are a lot that may not. And they need to know that there's another place within that blockchain that they could fit in and make money.
It's like most young girls I know, they want to be a model. Or they not just feel but want to be a model. But there's so many aspects of being a model.
Of course.
There's editorial, there's runway, there's film,
catalog,
there's catalog, there's being a foot model. You could be just the outline physique model. There's so many different things. You could be a stunt. I mean, modeling goes into so many different aspects. But if they're not walking down a runway, that's it. They don't want to focus on the other aspects of the fashion industry, or even get themselves through the door through another way. And somebody said, "Oh, I love you. Come and take this picture with me." But it is what it is in terms of the industry and what is educated and what people see. So many girls watch America's Next Top Model, and they that's what it is, and that's what is stuck in their heads, and there's nothing else other than that dream. But let's not. We can talk about that for so long. So you mentioned that with the recession, you had to figure out ways. So finding an alternative source in terms of a cheaper way for the advertisers to advertise within the magazine. That was how you kept your magazines going, or you had to find other ways. How do you stay fresh? How do you keep?
So to be an entrepreneur, you need to always think out of the box, and you need to not reinvent the wheel. So what I wanted to do, so I didn't reinvent the wheel. When I launched Mako, for instance, all the magazines in the Caribbean were tourism magazines. There was nothing else. There were either in-flight magazines or tourism magazines. And I said, no, I want to do a magazine on architecture. And everyone was like, no. And then I said, I want people to buy my magazine. I don't want it to give it away for free. Neysha, people do not buy magazines in the Caribbean. I'm like, okay, just watch. So I did that. Then what I want to do, and what I wanted to do back then, was with Mako People and M People magazine, which is M People Barbados magazine, is I wanted to create celebrities. Because you have celebrities all over the world. We have very, very few celebrities here in Barbados, or in Jamaica you have international celebrities.
Yeah.
But you put Machel Montano in the middle of Toronto, and unless you're a West Indian or Trini, no one knows who Machel is.
He's a blend right in.
And then, here's the thing. There's so many celebrities here in Barbados that should be known in Jamaica or in Trinidad. And they're not. I'm not talking about outside of the music industry, outside of the Alison Hines. And why can't our local celebrities become Caribbean celebrities? And so what I wanted to do was work with, we have so many talented people
So
here.
you're making the Caribbean the hub for us.
I'm taking people who are super talented and I'm showcasing them throughout the Caribbean. I'm getting them well networked, I'm putting them in magazines, I'm showing a side of them that people want to hear. A little bit like what you're doing here
Yeah.
at Tea Time.
Which is good. I mean,
Yeah.
because we don't know the backstory to Rihanna's brother, to any
Exactly.
person that we just say, oh, that's Rihanna's brother, so it's Rihanna's brother. But he has a story.
He has a great story, and my writer was so inspired when they were so blown away when they interviewed Rory. They were like, Neysha, he was so bright, he was engaging, he was
charismatic. He's so bubbly.
and they loved him. But of course, no one knows that. Everyone's focused on Rihanna. But there's so many Rory Fenties here, and you don't have to be related to a star.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To be a local celebrity. Oh, I know what that feels like. Oh, I know how that
Just
feels.
you and your damn t-shirts.
I don't care about those damn t-shirt. Neysha. As an entrepreneur,
I see smiles behind there.
it's just a t-shirt, people. It's just a t-shirt. This says Tea Time with Greg. As an entrepreneur, what are some of the biggest obstacles do you face doing business in Barbados?
Some of the biggest articles I face doing business in Barbados.
Obstacles.
Obstacles. As an entrepreneur or as a publisher?
You want to
Either.
dissect it? Either.
As an entrepreneur, there are quite a few obstacles. Barbados is still very, very, it's a very patriarchal society. It's very male-driven still.
I was going to go there as a
But
leading
it
lady.
is, yeah, yeah. It's and more so than in the rest of the Caribbean. In Trinidad and Jamaica, you're seeing women in higher and higher positions. In Barbados, not so much. In Barbados, and I will take this opportunity to say this, I'm going to be criticized for it. In Barbados, we still have this big sort of race divide here. And I've not witnessed this separation of color in any other island. And I know every island in the Caribbean intimately because my magazines are in all of them. I'm in all the islands every month. And nowhere has this big divide between white and black and this and that and Indian and Chinese. And here we're very, very cliquish. The next big obstacle I find for entrepreneurs, when I was a young entrepreneur, I went to someone who was older and more successful and owned the industry for help. And I said, you know, I have this new project I would love to do, but I need your help because I need to print it somewhere else. And this entrepreneur who was very successful said, oh no, but why should I help you? If you wish, we could partner, but I'm not going to just give away all of my information and my years of knowledge to you. And I went, oh, okay, no problem. And I went to another entrepreneur in Jamaica who was very different. He said, Neysha, not only am I going to introduce you to my printers, but I'm going to actually ask them to extend my line of credit for you so that you can get your project off the ground. And I said, wow. And that actually shaped me into, remember at the beginning I said I spend a lot of my time working within the community. I work with young entrepreneurs. And I do that because of that situation. In Barbados, we're never going to move any industry forward or the island forward unless we
have good mentorship.
Unless we have a mentorship, unless we help, offer a helping hand, and unless we're willing to share information, share your knowledge, share your contacts.
I think
you
that
can't
is,
hoard everything.
but I think a lot of people are afraid to give out too much information because
they're afraid of
competition.
competition.
So.
Oh no,
yeah.
We don't want another young fashion designer coming up and taking our space.
I mean, there are tons of models, there are tons of designers, there are tons of photographers, there's tons of makeup artists, there's tons of hairstylists. And it is healthy, and it keeps you relevant. It keeps you, if you really want this, how do you now keep yourself in the game? If not, the young one will come and knock you out.
But also, I have a lot of publishers in the Caribbean that I've helped. And not a day goes by that they will reach out to me to give back, and they would be like, Neysha, my gosh, I'm doing so well. How are you doing? Anyway, I have this advertiser I found, and they don't want to really be in my magazine, so here, I'm going to pass them on to you. And because I help them, they're like, Neysha, yeah. And I just wish that more people in Barbados would do that. And I wish that because I'm female, that more women in Barbados would help other women get on their feet and become stronger and help them become entrepreneurs as well.
Have you ever walked into a boardroom or to a meeting and you were the only female?
All the time. Not have I ever, all the time. I sit on many boards all the time.
Like we have a mutual friend. She said every time she would go to a meeting, and she's the only female in the meeting. All these guys were like sharks. So she had to become so masculine in a sense in terms of dominating the space to be recognized. And so you still maintain your femininity, or you have to become a lot stronger, not to become masculine in that sense, but to take command of the situation.
So to take command of the situation, to be heard, you just need to know your. Am I allowed to curse?
Know your shizzle. You know your shizzle.
Know your stuff. Another S word. You need to know your stuff.
Yeah.
And when you know your stuff, you're heard because you have a voice. For me, I'm almost 6 foot tall. So where a lot of women feel that they need to walk into a man's space and put on that beautiful structured suit. I wore my shortest dress, my highest heels, and I went there in my bright pink and beautiful makeup. And I was noticed, strangely enough, by a table full of men. So I don't want women to not be women. I want them to shine and be a woman and sit down and know your
strength.
Stuff.
Another S word.
Another S word. Brought to you today by...
And then there's a fine line of using your femininity to...
Get what you want.
Get what you want.
Of course. Why can't you?
But then that leads to all of the issues that we have currently going on in the United States. Those are some other shizzles going on.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So I think there's a fine line to how much to play on your feminine aspects and stuff.
I think that everyone, absolutely, and there's not a fine line. There's a big, solid line that you cannot cross, and I believe that women need to own their space, and that is what I believe. So you do not need. Growing up, you have to remember, I started my company when I was 28 years old. And so me being a 28-year-old entrepreneur, walking into most of the offices I walked into had a man behind the desk. I didn't feel that I need to compete with him. I didn't think that I needed to look like him, sound like him. I thought that I am me, and that because I own my space and I knew what I was selling, that I could walk into any office and get what I wanted.
Michelle Smith, she says she loves you. You're such an inspiration.
Thank you, Michelle.
No, but it's really important because I hear lots of horror stories, not just in what's going on in the United States with the problem with women trying to find their voice and speaking out, but lots of people don't know. Or, for instance, my mother went to get a massage and she went to a nice little lady, and because she's female, she went too hard in trying to give the massage, so she ended up causing a lot of pain because, for me now, I'm a makeup artist.
Yeah.
So people think that I am super and I got muscles, so but they didn't realize that my touch is
You
very.
don't have muscles.
It's hidden under the under the shirt. And so people think that my touch is very heavy, but you've had me do your makeup, and it's almost like I'm not even there.
You do amazing makeup, and it is like if you're
Not there. So that's the thing. So that's my point. So I want people to realize that use it when it's
Absolutely.
and just control the
Yeah.
situation and not let it go too
Yeah.
far. And then if it goes sour, then you're vexed. And you know those that
Yes,
does
yes,
happen.
yes.
So you live on the South Coast, Neysha. You know I was gonna go there, right?
You are so full of shizzle.
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 You know I had to go there. I mean, okay, you started a campaign 2 years ago. It's almost 2 years now.
It was a year. I think actually a year and a half ago. Yeah.
Being
And it wasn't a
concerned
campaign.
but okay, it's just being a concerned citizen
Uh-huh.
in your area about a problem.
Yes.
That's the best.
So for because I know that the show is being aired live on Mako's Facebook page as well. We have people from across the Caribbean that are watching this, and we have to let you know that Barbados is an awesome island, and you really must come to visit us. However, we're having a minor little problem on the South Coast where I live. Today's show is brought to you by the
by
letter S. And so we have a sewage issue.
for sip.
For sewage. And
Oh dear.
and so about a year and a half ago, and you were there with me, which was great. We had very heavy rains, and we noticed that all of the manholes on top of the sewage wells had been moved. And so we had written the ministry, and they had come out, the Minister of Health or Transport or Works, whatever, had come out and said, those manholes were moved due to vandalism. Some young crazy boy wearing a nasty t-shirt went and
PR.
moved.
You're gonna love public relations persons.
And so I said, well, absolutely, this is not what is happening, because at Graham Hall Swamp, they had then, because the rains were so heavy, they had to let out Graham Hall Swamp.
Mm-hmm.
And what came out of Graham Hall Swamp was not brackish water. Those of us who have lived on the beach next to the swamp for 40
Ever.
years know what brackish water is. This was not that. So then we had a town hall meeting, and we invited the relevant ministers to come and address the situation. Of course, they didn't want to address it, which was fine. They didn't send any representatives either. And therefore, they were just hoping that dry season would come and everything would dry up, which it did until this rainy season happened. But then what has happened is that if you don't maintain a sewage plant or a sewage system, which really needed to be maintained, and you fire all the engineers and you hire technicians instead at a lower pay, then the whole infrastructure of that will start fading, which now it has. And so this was not a political thing. This was just a health concern. I have an 8-year-old child, and when he walks out of my house and there's sewage and raw shizzle on the ground,
Mhm.
toilet paper, that's a health concern. You know, we get cholera from things like this. So I hope that they're willing to do something about it. I know we have an election coming up, And so I don't really care which party gets in, but someone needs to deal with this.
Deal with the issue.
The
Correct.
issue. It's a serious, serious issue. And if this gets out of hand, if we have one cholera,
Outbreak.
yeah, just
One.
just one, and that gets out, our tourism product goes to
The shizzle.
the shizzle.
Or down the shizzle.
Or down the
shizzle.
shizzle.
Yeah.
So, and of course, our livelihoods all depend mostly on tourism. So, it's a serious problem. So, but otherwise, I love the South Coast. It's the best place on the island.
A lot of people challenge you on that, but
No, the West Coast is hot. There's no breeze. Our beaches are nicer on the South Coast. The color of our water is turquoise. Our sand is like powder. And there's a lot more to do on the South Coast.
yeah. I mean, the West Coast has a lot more bars and restaurants, but
We have a lot more bars.
okay, but yeah, I was thinking about it. Okay, yeah, you win that one. So they have more restaurants.
Yeah.
So, where do you see yourself in the next 10 years?
I would like to stay retired, but my mom says that she thinks it's a near absolute impossibility for that to happen.
Mom, and I second, third, and fourth, and fifth that I met your daughter.
I see myself, I'm in the process of sort of, reinventing ourselves as I'm a legacy publisher. I'm, as I said, doing a lot more community work. I'm building a hospice. Barbados does not have a hospice. So if you are terminally ill and you need somewhere to pass away, it's QEH or in your home. And so we're building a hospice of the Barbados Association of Cancer Advocacy and Living Waters community have teamed up together, and we're building a hospice on the land that Living Waters donated in St. George by St. David's Church. And so I'm very committed to doing that. And I just started another charity called Books for Babies. Because remember when we were young and we used to rave that Barbados had the highest literacy rate in the world? Do you guys remember that?
Yes.
I mean, I would go anywhere. I'd be like, guys, I come from Barbados, highest literacy rate in the world.
And then
per
so many
capita.
people went overseas and studied, and they were like, okay, we can move on from this.
Exactly. And so what has happened, though, is our literacy rate has come down and fallen drastically. And you have kids in fifth form, kids in fourth form, kids in third form that cannot read. And so I need, and of course now with technology,
Yeah.
mothers are now saying, you know what? I don't have time to read to you. Here's an iPad or here's a phone. Play something. Look at this. So mothers are not reading to their children. And of course, if you have a mom that doesn't read, I was reading at the age of 3.5, I think. But my mom read to me every day, every night she had a book. I had a library of books. So I'm trying to encourage new moms. I'm giving every baby born a new book. Louise Fraser, who is an awesome speech therapist, along with Nina Godson and myself, when we started this charity. So
Neysha, when do you sleep?
between the hours of early to bed, early to rise, and the early bird catches the worm. So I'm up at like 5:36.
How many worms do you catch?
A few.
How many worms have you caught? So, just a really fun, we can get into some fun with Neysha now. All the seriousness is over. What are some of your guilty pleasures?
Which I do not do anymore, but my biggest guilty pleasures. But I'm a cancer patient, and smoking is very bad for you, and no one should ever smoke, ever. But it's hard. Wine, I love my wine. I love grapes, with or without bubbles. And I do not believe that champagne is something that should be sipped only to celebrate. I think that this should have champagne in it. Champagne is good.
We'll work on that next.
I think on mornings, a little glass of bubbles is good. Because,
But
well, it's fruit. And everyone said
Fermented fruit.
it's fermented fruit, but fruit nonetheless. And everyone should have fruit in the morning. Um, and
That's a beautiful way of putting it.
it is.
Like seriously, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
So wine.
So wine, and I used to love going out. I've become somewhat antisocial. Everyone thinks I'm the biggest social person on the planet, but I'm not. I really like staying home and inviting friends over. I love to cook. I love to cook. And I have a very good friend called Stephanie Von Oppen, who is an awesome cook as well.
So when next
And so
y'all
when
cooking?
we're
So when
together-
next y'all cooking? So
On the show. I'm going to bring Stephanie on the show.
Hello, but hey,
And we're going to cook something while we talk to you.
hey,
Yeah.
that's the next stage.
Yeah.
I know, because I've been to your home, I know you have a huge art collection.
Love my arts.
Is that part of your, to collect art pieces, part of your guilty pleasure as well, or just
I
as
don't,
a
I'm
person?
not, so that's just a pleasure, it's not a guilty pleasure, because I feel no guilt buying art. I'm very lucky because through my job, through my career, I travel a lot. And my parents were very big art collectors. And so I grew up with art, and my dad was a Renaissance man, so we grew up having to learn of all the great artists and the Renaissance artists, and learning philosophy and religion and everything else. But art was a huge part of our lives. And so I think I bought my first art piece when I was about 13 years old. And we still have it, and I've been collecting ever since. But when I go to Cuba, I would never leave Cuba without a piece of
But
art.
I've never heard
Jamaica,
anybody
Trinidad.
leave Cuba with a painting.
Exactly.
Or some art or
St.
something.
Lucia, yeah, we have amazing artists in the Caribbean. So I have two greats. I have a Picasso and an Henri Matisse. And outside of that, most of my art is from within the Caribbean. And I love my art.
No, I've seen. I haven't seen the one that you have in your room. You have a particular one you have in your room,
Yes.
right? I haven't seen that one. So, but you have.
I must invite you to my room.
Yeah. But no, I've seen your art collection and it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
No lie. So there's one question before we go into like what advice you would give to people and stuff, just for the fun of it. Would you rather?
Uh-huh.
Would you rather give up all of your paintings or gain 40 pounds?
Ooh, I'll gain 40 pounds.
I know, we really thought you was going to do the other way around.
No! Did you guys think that I was going to give up all my paintings? Gaining 40 pounds is awesome. That means I need to eat and drink.
So you're merry at that point.
I'm definitely,
Or
I'm
could you
very
have all
the
of
time.
your fruit that you have had? So
all the fruit. Yeah. No, I would gain 40 pounds. You know why? I can never buy back my art. I could certainly lose weight, though.
See, I just wanted to see how your brain would have processed it. Because I would have said the same thing.
I could lose weight. I love working out. I'm boxing now.
Oh? Ian
Hines is teaching me how to box. Southpaw.
So what form of exercise do you like besides the boxing?
I love Pilates, which I was trained. I did my instructorship, so I can train in Pilates. Although I'm a pretty shizzle instructor, but I could train you one day. Very core, core oriented. It's fantastic, and it takes your body and it does this. It lengthens you. I love it. So I love my Pilates, and I love my boxing. I play tennis. Play tennis every Thursday morning. I played this morning.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These 4 charities.
A child.
The
A
child,
husband.
the husband.
Working on having a couple of husbands.
Oh, the legislation, the laws changed.
Changing the laws.
And then you're starting the hospice and
Hospice, books for babies,
and look,
yeah. But I love, yes.
time management.
So-
You have impeccable time management.
So, and I tell all working moms this, you have to schedule in your workout as if it were a meeting, as if it were a board meeting with people attending that you you cannot just be late for or cancel, because there's so many more important things to do in a woman's life than to lie down on the floor and do yoga or Pilates, or to box with, Ian Hines, or to go to the gym with you and push weights.
No, but I tell everyone who says that they don't have the time, which I
You have to
never
schedule
thought
it in.
about it to put it in the way you did. Schedule it as a meeting, a PTA meeting, whatever.
Yes.
So you have to do this. You're going to make the
Absolutely.
time. So you have to make
And
the
no
time.
matter what happens, I mean, unless your child is very, very ill, and if you have a more important meeting that has, falls into your yoga time or gym time, say, unfortunately, I have a meeting that starts at 10:30. I have to be there for it. End of story. So but I learned this because when I turned 40, I was getting, I didn't know that it was because I was turning 40. I was like 39 3/4. And I had all.
Oh, you holding up. Hold on. I am going to be 40 in May, and we are partying together. We are
I'm like a decade
we
older
are
than
partying together.
Of
but
course.
You weren't letting go. I've let
So-
I've let go of that.
I would like any woman who is approaching the age of 40 to message us and tell us, how are you feeling? Because I was getting confused. I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to be a wife. I wanted to do well in my job. I wanted to do well in everything. I wanted to get home in time and make dinner and have dinner be fantastic. And so then I said, you know what, something's wrong. I'm not feeling happy anymore. I'm feeling quite shizzly.
Oh, this is going to be easy. Shizzle has been brought to you by the letter X.
As today's show.
Today's letter
And
X.
so I went to see a psychologist, a counselor. And I was like, Dr. Lashley, I'm just this and all of these things. And he listened to me and he was like, Neysha.
Go have some wine.
I'm like, yes. And he was like, how old are you? I'm like, I'm going to be 40 in 2 months. And he was like, that would be $150. And I think that turning 40 I don't know if it happens to men, but for women, I think turning 50 is big for men, but turning 40 for women is a big deal. And so that was a
me,
life-changing
I
event.
held on up 37, 38 into 39. I fought it. But then after I realized, you know what, I really want to enjoy 40. And I said, shizzle. And just embrace it. And I'm
you
like,
have to embrace it.
I really
But-
want to enjoy
But that
40.
is when the psychologist, Dr. Ashley, said, Neysha, here's what I want you to do. He goes, I want you to do 2 things. I want you to take Fridays off. I'm like, what do you mean off? He goes, I want you to take Fridays off. Don't go to work, but that doesn't mean that I want you to do things for yourself. If you really have to do some work, then do some work, but don't go into the office. I do not want you to go into the office. I want you to take the day off. So I started taking Fridays off. And I was in a position where I could, because my company had grown and was strong, and I was good.
had a good team.
I had a good team. So I started taking Fridays off. And he was one who said, and I want you to start working out. 1 hour every day, I want you to take that hour and work out. And he was one who said, think of it as a meeting. So I did it. I followed the doctor's orders, and I got better.
Where the doctor's gone from this to apple a day keeps him away.
Grapes.
Great.
Grapes.
So you would rather gain the 40 pounds than give it
I
up.
would gain 40 pounds in a second.
I don't know. I have a thing for fat. So, but I.
No, but you see, when you get to my age, can you see?
You need a little more.
So when you gain weight, the lines in your face you don't see them as much.
Oh, everything fills out.
Everything fills out.
Okay. That was interesting. So, what advice would you have for anyone who wants to start a business or even to be a publisher?
If you want to be a publisher, I would suggest that you not be a print publisher. I would suggest that you keep up with trends, go into digital, go into social, go into blogging, there's so many aspects of publishing. if you want to be an entrepreneur, you just have to do it. A lot of people are scared, and it's like diving into a pool of cold water. And they, especially women, they find all of these excuses. You know, if you want to be a fashion designer, oh no, maybe I need to go to fashion school. Oh no, you don't.
Or become a makeup artist, you have to go to school.
Exactly. And talk to people and go to people who are already in that industry. And if you meet the right people in the industry, they hopefully will hold your hand and help you. And ask 1,000 questions. 1,000 questions. Ask everyone what they think. If you want to sell iRock mugs, go and ask everyone, if I sold these, would you buy it? And that's what I do. You know, if I wanted to start a new magazine, I would call everyone and say, I'm thinking about starting this. What do you think? And they'd be like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm like, no, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear, what do you really think? Like, would you buy it? Would you advertise? Oh, of course I would. Okay, can I have $3,000 now? Oh gosh, no. Why not? Oh, because, you know, I don't really advertise in such a thing. And so you get the truth out of them, and then you're able to determine whether your idea is a good one or not. But go ahead. And you know, the thing in the Caribbean is that you can be a big fish in a very small pond. We're not living in New York. If you want to be a chef, if you want to open up a little restaurant, there's no reason why you should not be hugely successful. Hugely successful.
Do you think that printed magazines have a shelf life, not in terms of the content shelf life, but actually printing has a few more years before it goes fully digital? Or you think magazines still, the ones that survive will still have their place?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that there's some print that is definitely gone. Newspapers, for instance, goner. Why would you want to buy a newspaper and read about what happened yesterday while they were printing the newspaper for me to read it?
And the way social media is now,
so news is constant.
The news
every
is
hour.
so late because someone already...
I mean, from 1 hour to the next, Trump can make a total shizzle of himself. And so you can't wait for a newspaper to read that. You need to know it right now.
Exactly.
So there's some magazines that may not work, like tourism magazines now. I don't know if there's a place for tourism magazines, because if people are coming to your island, are they going to flip through a magazine to decide where to eat or what to do? No, they're going on TripAdvisor. They're going on social media. They're Googling, the top restaurant in Barbados. That is how you find out where to go. So I think those magazines are may not have a shelf life. I think that there are some magazines that do have a shelf life. I think fashion magazines, I think people still love the feel of paper.
Like the September issue of Vogue.
Vogue. The September issue is beautiful.
Like, I think that's
you
the
want to
most...
flip through it.
That is
and
the
Pinterest.
most...
So I love watching fashion on Pinterest, but flicking through fashion on my phone and flipping a page of the September issue of Vogue, two totally different experiences.
And it smell. It's like a new car smell.
It is.
There's something
It
that
is.
you become engrossed in the
Absolutely.
experience and the feel.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, this looks more luxurious than I thought.
So I tell everyone when I get this question a lot, and I say, remember back in the day when we all used to go to the Vista Cinema.
Oh, there. Woo! She gone
The
back.
Vista. And everyone loved going to the Vista. It was such an outing, and you got to get the back row so you can make out with whomever, and it was an experience.
I don't know about that heart. I don't know.
But then, you know what happened? VHS came out, and everyone's like, whoa, now we can go to Chubby's and get 7 VHS cassettes.
And you're going home. You're going home to buy it.
But then you can watch a movie at home. So then we had to close down the Vista. No one went to the Vista anymore, because why do you need to go out of your house to go to see a movie when you could watch it at home? Now you can watch anything from your bed or couch, because now you have Apple TV and Netflix.
You can Netflix and chill.
You can watch The Crown all weekend long. You don't. But what do we want to do? We want to go to the Olympus. We want to go and
You know,
It's
I
the
actually enjoyed
experience.
going to drive-in no more.
I love the
No,
drive-in.
I'm sorry. And for those Black Panther fans out there, I am going, woo-hoo, I am going to the drive-in and we're not downloading it, producers. We are not downloading anything.
Do you know we have the guy that's in Black Panther? One of the characters is from Trinidad, and we have him on the front cover of Macro People Trinidad next month. So, so yes, I love the drive-in. I love the going to the cinema, and there are people who are still going to love a magazine, and so I think that there is a future for magazines.
Well, you clearly have proven that your dream can become a reality.
It can.
And anything you put your fingers on.
Yes.
No, seriously. Neysha, I want to thank you so much for joining me on Tea Time today. It was an absolute pleasure. I am certain that certain things you've had to say over and over again, so it's like thing, but I tried to make it more personal. People could really get to really know who Neysha. Everyone's heard of M People Magazine or Macro Magazine, but not everyone has heard of Neysha Suli. Thank you so much for joining me. So, ladies and gentlemen, this was Tea Time with Greg. Next week, we're going to have George Griffith of Surfside Wellness Center.
George, who has muscles as big as this.
No, George bigger. I know what he's taking. George one's bigger. And I'm saying it for George to hear. These are just clean aesthetics. Clean. Woosah. Anyhow, thank you for joining me on Tea Time with Greg. And this week on Happy Hour, I have Joaquin, and that's 7 to 8 from Brady's Bar. Feel free to come down and join us at Happy Hour. And it's always been a pleasure to have great guests on Tea Time, and even more fun and alcohol and drink responsibly. I like to always say that at Happy Hour. So once again, thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Greg Williams. Over and out.